The wind whispered through the tall grass of the Kansas prairie, carrying with it the scent of dust and the promise of a new beginning. But for Sarah, the wind carried only a chilling reminder of her solitude. At 38, she felt the weight of years pressing down on her. Each birthday, a stark announcement of opportunities missed and dreams deferred. The small town she called home offered little solace, its familiar faces now etched with pity or thinly veiled judgment. Sarah yearned for a family, a warm hearth, and the comforting presence of a loving partner. She watched as younger women courted and married, their lives blossoming with children and shared laughter. But for Sarah, the prospect of finding love seemed increasingly distant, a fading ember in the hearth of her heart. Then, she stumbled upon an advertisement for a mail-order bride service, a lifeline thrown across the vast ocean of her loneliness. The idea, at first, seemed audacious, even desperate, but as she read the testimonials and imagined a life beyond the confines of her small town, a spark of hope ignited within her. Maybe, just maybe, she could find happiness in the rugged landscapes of the West. With trembling hands, she penned a letter to the agency, describing her virtues, her skill with a needle, her knack for cooking, her unwavering loyalty. She included a photograph, carefully chosen to present the best version of herself, a version that belied the lines etched by time and worry. Soon, letters began to arrive, each one a potential pathway to a new life. Among them was a letter from Caleb, a rancher in Montana. His words were simple but honest, describing his need for a wife to share his life and help him manage his sprawling ranch. He spoke of vast skies, rolling hills, and a community of hard-working people. Their correspondence blossomed into a hopeful exchange of dreams and aspirations. Sarah envisioned herself tending a garden, baking bread in a wood-fired oven, and raising children amidst the beauty of the Montana landscape. Caleb, in turn, spoke of a strong, capable woman who could stand by his side and share the burdens and joys of ranch life. With each passing letter, Sarah's hope grew stronger, eclipsing the fear and uncertainty that had plagued her for so long. She sold her belongings, packed her meager possessions into a sturdy trunk, and boarded a train bound for Montana, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was it, her chance at a new life, a chance at love. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, hoping that the man waiting for her would see beyond her age and recognize the love she had to offer. The journey was long, but Sarah held onto the image of Caleb's kind eyes from his letters, a beacon guiding her toward a future she desperately craved. The train rattled onward, a metal serpent winding its way through the ever-changing landscape. Sarah gazed out the window, watching the scenery transform from rolling green hills to vast, open plains. Each mile felt like a step closer to her new life, a life she had meticulously crafted in her letters with Caleb. Those letters had become her lifeline, a tangible connection to a future she dared to imagine. Caleb's words were like a balm to her weary soul. He wrote of the hard work, but also of the simple pleasures, the sunrise over the mountains, the scent of pine in the air, the camaraderie of the ranch hands. He painted a picture of a life filled with purpose and belonging, a life Sarah desperately craved. She reread his letters countless times, memorizing each phrase, each sentiment. She learned about his ranch, its name, Whispering Pines, and the challenges he faced in running it alone after his parents passed. He needed a partner, someone to share the workload and the loneliness. And Sarah, in turn, needed him. In her letters, Sarah shared her own story, carefully omitting details she felt might deter him. She spoke of her skills as a seamstress and cook, her love for animals, and her desire to create a warm and loving home. She emphasized her strong work ethic and her willingness to embrace the challenges of ranch life. She did not dwell on her age, nor did she mention the lines that time had etched on her face. She wanted Caleb to see her for who she was, a woman with a kind heart and a strong spirit, not a woman defined by the passage of years. She hoped he would recognize the love she had to offer, a love that had been waiting patiently for its chance to bloom. One particular letter stood out, a letter where Caleb described his vision for their future together. He wrote of building a small schoolhouse on the ranch for the children of the neighboring families, and of Sarah teaching them to read and write. He envisioned her filling the ranch house with laughter and warmth, creating a haven for weary travelers and lonely souls. That letter solidified Sarah's decision. She knew, with a certainty that surprised even herself, that Caleb was the man she was meant to be with. He saw beyond her age and recognized her potential, her capacity for love and compassion. As the train pulled into the small Montana town, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She smoothed down her dress, adjusted her bonnet, and took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. She stepped off the train, her eyes scanning the crowd for the face she had come to know so well through his letters. She clutched her worn carpet bag tightly, a symbol of her hopes and dreams for a new beginning. A tall figure detached itself from the small crowd gathered at the train depot. Sarah's heart leaped. This must be Caleb. He was handsome, as she had imagined, with strong features and kind eyes, though a bit sterner than his letter suggested. He wore a worn leather jacket and a dusty Stetson, every inch the rugged rancher she had envisioned. He approached her hesitantly, his gaze sweeping over her before settling on her face. Sarah offered him a tentative smile, her hand outstretched in greeting. "Caleb?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. He took her hand, his grip firm but lacking warmth. "Sarah," he acknowledged, his voice devoid of the enthusiasm she had expected. "Welcome to Montana." He picked up her carpet bag, his movements efficient but impersonal. He didn't offer her a reassuring smile or a word of comfort, and Sarah's initial excitement began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of unease. As they walked towards his waiting wagon, Sarah tried to make conversation, pointing out the picturesque scenery and commenting on the crisp mountain air. But Caleb remained largely silent, offering only curt responses and avoiding eye contact. The ride to the ranch was long and uncomfortable. Caleb focused on driving the wagon, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Sarah sat beside him, feeling increasingly invisible, her dreams of a warm welcome slowly dissolving into a cold reality. Finally, they arrived at Whispering Pines Ranch. The house was smaller and more weathered than she had pictured, but the surrounding landscape was breathtaking, with towering pine trees and rolling hills stretching as far as the eye could see. Caleb helped her down from the wagon, his touch perfunctory. He led her into the house, a sparsely furnished cabin with a single bedroom and a small kitchen. The air inside was stale and unwelcoming. He set her carpet bag down in the corner of the room. "This is it," he said, his voice flat. "Make yourself at home." Sarah looked around, her heart sinking. This wasn't the warm, inviting haven she had envisioned. It was a cold, empty space, reflecting the emptiness she felt inside. She turned to Caleb, her eyes pleading for some sign of affection, some indication that he was happy to see her. But his face remained impassive. He cleared his throat and shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "We need to talk," he said, his words hanging heavy in the air. Sarah knew, with a sinking feeling, that the conversation was not going to be what she had hoped for. The dream she had so carefully nurtured was about to shatter. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. She braced herself, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. "What is it, Caleb?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He avoided her gaze, shuffling his feet on the wooden floor. I don't know how to say this," he mumbled, his face reddening. Sarah's stomach twisted into a knot. She had a feeling she knew what was coming, but she couldn't bring herself to voice the dreaded words. Finally, Caleb looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and discomfort. "Sarah," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I'm sorry, but I can't marry you." The words hit her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. She stumbled backward, her hand reaching out to steady herself against the rough wooden wall. What do you mean?" she stammered, her voice barely audible. You're "You're not what I expected," he blurted out, his words harsh and unforgiving. "I was expecting someone younger." The truth hung in the air, raw and brutal. Sarah's face flushed with shame and humiliation. All her carefully constructed hopes and dreams crumbled around her, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. "Your letters," she managed to choke out. "You said you wanted a partner, someone to share your life." "I do," Caleb replied, his voice softening slightly. "But I also need someone who can help me build a family. Someone who can give me children." He didn't need to say it. Sarah knew what he meant. At 38, her chances of conceiving were dwindling. She was no longer the young, fertile woman he had envisioned. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her. "So, that's it?" she whispered, her voice filled with despair. "You're sending me away?" Caleb nodded, his face etched with regret. "I'll pay for your train ticket back east," he said, avoiding her gaze. "I am sorry, Sarah. I truly am, but I can't marry you." He turned and walked towards the door, leaving Sarah standing alone in the cold, empty cabin, her heart shattered into a million pieces. The dream she had traveled so far to realize had turned into a nightmare. She was alone, stranded in a strange land, with no hope and no future. The weight of her years pressed down on her, heavier than ever before. She was too old, too worn, too unwanted. And the man she had hoped would love her had rejected her without a second thought. The days that followed were a blur of misery and confusion. Sarah felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of the small town, unsure of where to go or what to do. Caleb had given her the train ticket, but she couldn't bring herself to use it. The thought of returning east, defeated and alone, was unbearable. She rented a small, dingy room above the general store, the cheapest accommodation she could find. The room was sparsely furnished with a narrow bed, a rickety table, and a cracked wash basin. But it was a roof over her head, a temporary refuge from the storm raging within her. She spent her days wandering the streets of the town, feeling the weight of judgmental eyes upon her. The townspeople knew why she was there, and they knew she had been rejected. Whispers followed her as she walked by, and she could feel the pitying glances of the women and the smug amusement of the men. She tried to find work, but no one was willing to hire her. She was an outsider, a woman past her prime, with no skills that were particularly valuable in a frontier town. The general store owner offered her a few odd jobs, sweeping the floor and dusting the shelves, but the pay was meager, barely enough to cover her rent and food. At night, she lay in bed, staring up at the cracked ceiling, tears streaming down her face. She replayed the conversation with Caleb over and over in her mind, searching for some clue, some sign that she could have done something differently. But there was nothing. She was simply too old, too unwanted. She thought about her family back east, about the disappointed looks on their faces when she told them she was leaving. She had wanted to prove them wrong, to show them that she could find happiness on her own. But now she had failed. She was a disgrace, a laughingstock. She considered taking her own life, ending the pain and humiliation once and for all. But something held her back. A flicker of defiance, a stubborn refusal to give up completely. She had come too far, endured too much, to simply surrender. She decided to give herself one more chance. She would stay in Montana, not for Caleb, but for herself. She would find a way to make a life for herself, to prove that she was more than just an unwanted mail-order bride. She would show them all that she was strong, capable, and worthy of respect. She would find her own happiness, even if it meant forging a new path alone. The first step was finding a way to survive. And for that, she needed a job, a real job, something that would give her purpose and dignity. Across the street from the general store, nestled between the saloon and the livery stable, stood Jedediah's blacksmith shop. The rhythmic clang of hammer on steel echoed through the town, a constant reminder of Jedediah's presence. He was a man of few words, his face weathered and lined like the bark of an old tree, his hands calloused and strong from years of working the forge. Jedediah had observed Sarah since her arrival, Noticing the hopeful gleam in her eyes as she stepped off the train and the subsequent despair that clouded her face after her encounter with Caleb. He had seen the whispers and the judgmental glances, and he felt a pang of sympathy for the woman who had been so publicly humiliated. He was a widower, having lost his wife to illness several years prior. He understood the pain of loneliness and the sting of rejection. He had learned to find solace in his work, in the simple act of shaping metal into something useful and beautiful. One afternoon, as Sarah was sweeping the boardwalk in front of the general store, Jedediah emerged from his shop, wiping his brow with a soot-stained cloth. He paused, his gaze meeting hers. "Afternoon," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Sarah offered him a hesitant smile. "Good afternoon," she replied, her voice barely audible. Jedediah studied her for a moment, his eyes searching. "You're new in town, aren't you?" he asked. Sarah nodded, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I was supposed to marry Caleb," she said, her voice catching in her throat. Jedediah nodded knowingly. "I heard," he said, his voice devoid of judgment. "Folks in this town like to talk." He paused, then added, "You seem like a hard-working woman." Sarah looked up, surprised by his words. "I try to be," she said. "I could use some help around the shop," Jedediah said, his gaze steady. "Nothing fancy, just cleaning and organizing. I can pay you a fair wage." Sarah's heart leaped with hope. A job, a real job. It was exactly what she needed. I would be grateful," she stammered, her eyes filling with tears. "Good," Jedediah said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Start tomorrow morning." He turned and walked back into his shop, leaving Sarah standing on the boardwalk, her heart filled with a mixture of gratitude and relief. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a place for herself in this town after all. And maybe, just maybe, she could find a measure of happiness, even after the devastating rejection she had endured. Jedediah's offer was a lifeline, a chance to prove herself and to start new. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the blacksmith shop, her heart filled with a mixture of apprehension and hope. The shop was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of coal smoke and hot metal. Tools of all shapes and sizes hung from the walls, and sparks flew from the forge as Jedediah worked on a piece of iron. He glanced up as she entered, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Ready to work?" he asked, his voice gruff but friendly. Sarah nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir," she replied. Jedediah showed her around the shop, explaining her duties. He asked her to sweep the floor, organize the tools, and clean the grime from the windows. It was simple work, but Sarah approached it with diligence and care. She swept the floor until it gleamed, arranged the tools in neat rows, and scrubbed the windows until they sparkled, allowing sunlight to stream into the shop. As she worked, Jedediah continued to hammer and shape the metal, his movements precise and efficient. He didn't say much, but Sarah could feel his presence, a quiet reassurance that she was welcome and valued. During her lunch break, Jedediah offered her a cup of coffee and a piece of bread. They sat together in silence, sipping their coffee and watching the world go by outside the shop window. "Thank you," Sarah said finally, breaking the silence, "for giving me this chance." Jedediah shrugged. "You needed a job," he said, "and I needed some help." But Sarah knew it was more than that. Jedediah had seen her pain, her humiliation, and he had offered her a hand when no one else would. He had shown her compassion and kindness, and she would never forget it. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah settled into her routine at the blacksmith shop. She enjoyed the work, the sense of accomplishment she felt after a hard day's labor. She learned to appreciate the rhythmic clang of the hammer, the heat of the forge, and the quiet companionship of Jedediah. She also began to learn about metalworking. Jedediah showed her how to use the different tools, how to heat the metal, and how to shape it into different forms. She was fascinated by the process, by the way Jedediah could transform a piece of raw iron into something useful and beautiful. One day, Jedediah asked her to help him with a project, a decorative iron gate for a local rancher. Sarah hesitated, unsure of her abilities. But Jedediah encouraged her. telling her that she was a quick learner and that he had faith in her. Together, they worked on the gate, Sarah holding the metal while Jedediah hammered and shaped it. She was amazed by her own progress, by the way her hands seemed to instinctively know what to do. As they worked side by side, Sarah and Jedediah began to develop a deeper connection, a bond based on mutual respect and understanding. They shared stories about their pasts, their dreams for the future, and their hopes for a better life. Sarah found herself opening up to Jedediah in ways she never thought possible. She trusted him, she valued his opinion, and she cherished his friendship. And as time went on, she began to realize that she was falling in love with him. As Sarah's skills in the blacksmith shop grew, so did her confidence. Jedediah, unlike Caleb, never made her feel inadequate or unwanted. He appreciated her hard work, her willingness to learn, and her kind heart. He saw past her age and recognized the beauty within her, the strength and resilience that had allowed her to overcome so much adversity. He often complimented her on her work, praising her attention to detail and her natural talent for metalworking. He encouraged her to experiment, to try new techniques, and to push herself beyond her comfort zone. He treated her as an equal, a partner, and a friend. One evening, after a long day of work, Jedediah invited Sarah to join him for supper at the local diner. They sat at a small table by the window, sharing a plate of fried chicken and mashed potatoes. "You're a natural at this," Jedediah said, his eyes twinkling. "You're strong, you're resilient, and you have a heart of gold." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever truly seen her, the woman she was inside. "Thank you, Jedediah," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "That means a lot to me." As they finished their supper, Jedediah reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm and gentle, sending a shiver down her spine. "I'm glad you're here, Sarah," he said, his gaze sincere. "You've brought a light into my life that I thought was gone forever." Sarah squeezed his hand, her heart overflowing with gratitude and affection. She knew, in that moment, that she had found something special with Jedediah, something that Caleb had never been able to offer her. She had found true friendship, true acceptance, and true love. And she knew that she would do everything in her power to protect it. The feeling was mutual, and Jedediah found himself drawn to Sarah's inner strength and kind spirit. He saw in her a partner, a confidant, and a woman who could fill the void in his life. The townspeople began to notice their growing closeness, and the whispers turned from pity to curiosity, wondering if a romance was blossoming between the blacksmith and the rejected mail-order bride. The rhythmic clang of the hammer became the soundtrack to Sarah's new life. She found a surprising joy in the physicality of the work, the feel of the hot metal beneath her hands, the satisfaction of shaping something new and useful. Jedediah was a patient teacher, guiding her with gentle hands and a quiet encouragement. She discovered a natural talent for detail work, creating intricate designs on horseshoes, gates, and even small household items. Her delicate touch brought a touch of elegance to Jedediah's sturdy craftsmanship, creating pieces that were both functional and beautiful. The blacksmith shop became her sanctuary, a place where she felt safe, valued, and respected. She no longer felt like an outsider, a rejected mail-order bride. She was Sarah, the blacksmith's apprentice, a skilled artisan in her own right. The townspeople, initially skeptical, began to admire her work. They commissioned her to create personalized gifts, decorative items for their homes, and even specialized tools for their farms and ranches. Sarah's reputation grew, and soon the blacksmith shop was thriving, thanks to her talent and hard work. She also found a sense of community in her new surroundings. She befriended the other shopkeepers, the women in town, and even some of the ranch hands who came to Jedediah for repairs. She was no longer the object of whispers and pitying glances. She was a respected member of the community, a woman who had overcome adversity and found her own path to happiness. One day, a wealthy rancher approached Jedediah with a special request. He wanted a custom-made weather vane for his new barn, something unique and eye-catching. Jedediah, knowing Sarah's talent for design, entrusted the project to her. Sarah poured her heart and soul into the weather vane, creating a magnificent piece that depicted a soaring eagle, its wings outstretched, ready to take flight. The rancher was thrilled with the result, praising Sarah's skill and creativity. "This is the most beautiful weather vane I've ever seen," he exclaimed. "You have a true gift, Miss Sarah." Sarah beamed with pride, her heart swelling with joy. She had found her purpose, her passion, and her place in the world. She was no longer defined by her past, by the rejection she had endured. She was defined by her talent, her strength, and her unwavering spirit. And she knew that she owed it all to Jedediah, the kind and compassionate blacksmith who had given her a chance to start anew. The success of the weather vane further solidified Sarah's position in the town and in Jedediah's heart. It was clear to everyone that she was not just helping in the shop, but a vital part of it. The long hours spent side by side at the forge fostered a connection between Sarah and Jedediah that went beyond mere friendship. They learned each other's rhythms, anticipating the other's needs without a word. They shared stories of their pasts, revealing vulnerabilities and dreams they had long kept hidden. Sarah spoke of her childhood in the East, her aspirations to become a teacher, and the circumstances that led her to become a mail-order bride. She confessed her fears and insecurities, her doubts about her own worthiness. Jedediah listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and understanding. He, in turn, shared his own story, the loss of his wife, the loneliness he had endured, and the passion he found in his craft. He spoke of his dreams for the future, his desire to leave a lasting legacy, and his hope for a companion to share his life. They discovered a shared love for simple things, a beautiful sunset, a good book, a lively conversation. They enjoyed each other's company, finding comfort and solace in their shared experiences. As their bond deepened, they began to spend more time together outside of the shop. They took walks in the surrounding hills, admiring the wildflowers and the breathtaking views. They shared meals at the diner, laughing and joking with the other townspeople. They attended community events, dancing and celebrating alongside their neighbors. One warm summer evening, they sat on the porch of Jedediah's house, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. "I never thought I would find happiness again," Sarah said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "After Caleb rejected me, I felt like my life was over." Jedediah took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "You're a strong woman, Sarah," he said. "You deserve to be happy." He paused, then added, "You've brought so much joy into my life. I can't imagine what it would be like without you." Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart swelling with love. "I feel the same way," she whispered. They sat in silence for a long time, content to simply be together, sharing the quiet beauty of the night. The air was filled with the scent of pine and the sound of crickets chirping in the distance. Finally, Jedediah turned to her, his eyes filled with tenderness. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Before he could finish his sentence, a figure emerged from the shadows, interrupting their intimate moment. It was Caleb, his face etched with regret and a hint of desperation. He had come to win Sarah back. This unexpected interruption would test the strength of Sarah and Jedediah's growing love. "Sarah," Caleb said, his voice pleading, "I need to talk to you." Sarah stood up, her face hardening. "There's nothing to talk about, Caleb," she said, her voice firm. Jedediah stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Sarah's arm. "Caleb," he said, his voice calm but assertive, "I think you should leave." "This doesn't concern you, Jedediah," Caleb retorted, his eyes flashing with anger. "This is between Sarah and me." "It concerns me when you're bothering my friend," Jedediah replied, his grip tightening on Sarah's arm. Caleb ignored Jedediah and turned back to Sarah. "I made a mistake, Sarah," he said, his voice softening. "I was wrong to reject you. I was blinded by my own foolishness." He paused, then added, "I see now that you're a strong, capable woman. You're beautiful, Sarah, inside and out." Sarah scoffed. "Don't insult my intelligence, Caleb," she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. "You didn't think I was beautiful when I arrived. You made that perfectly clear." "I was wrong," Caleb insisted. "I've been watching you, Sarah. I've seen how you've transformed this town, how you've brought joy and beauty to everything you touch. I've seen how happy you are with Jedediah." He paused, his voice filled with desperation. "I want that happiness, Sarah. I want to be the one who makes you smile." Sarah shook her head, her eyes filled with pity. "It's too late, Caleb," she said. "You had your chance, and you threw it away. I moved on. I found someone who appreciates me for who I am, not for who you want me to be." She turned to Jedediah, her eyes filled with love. "I'm happy, Caleb," she said. "Happier than I've ever been in my life." Caleb's face fell, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He knew that he had lost her, that there was no chance of winning her back. "I understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Sarah watched him go, feeling a mix of pity and relief. She had made the right decision. She had chosen happiness over regret, love over loneliness. Jedediah turned to her, his eyes filled with admiration. "You handled that well," he said, his voice gentle. Sarah smiled, leaning into his embrace. "I had you to protect me," she said softly. "I knew I was safe with you." The failed attempt by Caleb only served to strengthen the bond between Sarah and Jedediah, making them realize how much they valued each other. After Caleb disappeared into the night, Jedediah led Sarah back inside the house, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. The air inside felt warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the chill of the night. He closed the door and turned to face her, his eyes filled with a mixture of tenderness and concern. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded, her heart still pounding in her chest. "I'm fine," she said, "just shaken." Jedediah cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reassuring. "I was afraid," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was afraid you might go back to him." Sarah smiled, shaking her head. "Never," she said firmly. "I found what I've been searching for, Jedediah. I'm not going to let it go." Jedediah's eyes searched hers, his expression filled with emotion. "Sarah," he began, his voice trembling slightly, I haven't been completely honest with you." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "I've been trying to find the right words," Jedediah continued, "but I'm not very good at expressing my feelings." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Seeing Caleb tonight, seeing how much he regretted losing you, it made me realize that I can't wait any longer." He took her hands in his grip firm and steady. "Sarah," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "I love you." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, her heart soaring with joy. "Jedediah," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I love your strength," Jedediah continued, "your kindness, your unwavering spirit. You've brought so much light into my life, Sarah. You've made me believe in love again." He paused, then added, "I know I'm not a young man. I don't have much to offer you, but I promise to love you with all my heart, to cherish you, and to protect you for the rest of our days." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, blurring her vision. She had waited so long to hear those words, to find someone who loved her for who she was, not for who she wasn't. "Oh, Jedediah," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I love you too." She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. He held her tightly, his body shaking with emotion. They stood there for a long time, embracing each other, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. In that moment, they knew that they had found their forever, a love that would endure through thick and thin, a love that would last a lifetime. The confession cemented their relationship and set the stage for a future filled with shared happiness. The following morning, Sarah awoke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window and the smell of freshly brewed coffee wafting from the kitchen. She smiled, remembering the events of the previous night. Jedediah loved her, and she loved him. She found him in the kitchen, humming softly as he prepared breakfast. He turned as she entered, his face lighting up with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said, his voice filled with affection. "I hope you slept well." "I did," Sarah replied, her heart overflowing with happiness. "I haven't slept this well in years." They ate breakfast together, their conversation light and easy. As they finished their meal, Jedediah stood up and walked over to the fireplace. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. She knew what was coming. Jedediah knelt down on one knee, his eyes filled with love. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, but she had never dared to believe that it would actually happen. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Jedediah, I will marry you." Jedediah smiled, his face radiant with joy. He opened the box and revealed a simple gold ring, its surface engraved with a delicate floral pattern. He took her hand and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. They embraced, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. They had found their soulmates, their partners in life. They were ready to face the future together, hand in hand. The news of their engagement spread quickly through the town. The townspeople were delighted, celebrating their happiness and offering their congratulations. Even Caleb, upon hearing the news, sent Sarah a letter of apology and wished her well. Sarah and Jedediah began planning their wedding, a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by their closest friends and family. They chose a beautiful spot in the hills overlooking the town, a place where they could exchange their vows under the open sky. Sarah knew that her life was far from perfect. She had endured hardship and heartbreak, but she had also found love, acceptance, and a sense of belonging. She was grateful for every moment, every experience that had led her to this point. She was ready to embark on this new chapter of her life, with Jedediah by her side. She was ready to be his wife. The town rejoiced with them, happy that Sarah had finally found the love and acceptance she deserved. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear, the Montana sky a brilliant shade of blue. A gentle breeze rustled through the pine trees, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and the promise of a beautiful beginning. Sarah awoke early, her heart filled with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She dressed carefully in a simple but elegant gown that she had made herself, its delicate lace trim a testament to her skill as a seamstress. She brushed her hair, adding a touch of perfume, and gazed at her reflection in the mirror. She saw a woman who had known sorrow and hardship, but who had also found love and happiness. She was ready to be a bride. Jedediah was waiting for her at the foot of the hill, his eyes filled with love as she approached. He wore a new suit, his face clean-shaven, his silver hair neatly combed. He looked handsome and distinguished, the man of her dreams. They walked hand in hand to the clearing where the ceremony would take place. Their friends and neighbors were gathered there, their faces beaming with joy. The clearing was decorated with wildflowers and ribbons, creating a festive and welcoming atmosphere. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, officiated by the town's reverend. Sarah and Jedediah exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love and cherish each other through thick and thin. "I, Jedediah," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "take you, Sarah, to be my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." "I, Sarah," she replied, her voice filled with love, "take you, Jedediah, to be my husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." They exchanged rings, symbols of their unending love and commitment. As they were pronounced husband and wife, the crowd erupted in applause, showering them with petals and well wishes. The reception that followed was a joyous celebration of their love. There was music, dancing, and plenty of food and drink. Sarah and Jedediah danced together, their faces radiant with happiness. They were surrounded by friends who loved and supported them, who appreciated them for who they were. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the hills. Sarah and Jedediah stood together, watching their guests depart. They were finally alone, husband and wife, ready to begin their new life together. They knew that their journey would not always be easy, but they were confident that they could face any challenge, as long as they had each other. The wedding was a testament to their love and a symbol of their bright future together. The small town celebrated with them, grateful for the love and happiness that Sarah and Jedediah had brought to their community. In the years that followed, Sarah and Jedediah built a life filled with love, laughter, and shared purpose. They continued to work side by side at the blacksmith shop, their skills complementing each other, their creativity flourishing. Sarah's intricate designs added a touch of elegance to Jedediah's sturdy craftsmanship, creating pieces that were both functional and beautiful. Their shop became a hub of the community, a place where people gathered to share stories, seek advice, and admire their handiwork. Sarah and Jedediah were respected and admired by all, not only for their skill, but also for their kindness and generosity. They opened their hearts and their home to those in need, offering food, shelter, and a listening ear to anyone who sought their help. Sarah also used her skills to teach others, offering classes in sewing, cooking, and metalworking to the young women of the town. She empowered them to develop their own talents and to create their own opportunities. She found joy in helping others, in sharing her knowledge and her experiences. She became a mentor and a role model, inspiring countless women to pursue their dreams and to believe in themselves. Jedediah, in turn, continued to support her in every way possible. He encouraged her to pursue her passions, to take risks, and to never give up on her dreams. He was her rock, her confidant, and her biggest fan. They faced challenges along the way, as all couples do. There were disagreements, disappointments, and moments of doubt. But they always found a way to overcome their obstacles, relying on their love, their trust, and their unwavering commitment to each other. They proved that love knows no age, that true beauty lies within, and that happiness can be found even in the most unexpected places. Sarah, once a rejected mail-order bride, became the most beloved woman in town, a testament to her strength, her resilience, and her kind heart. She had found her true home, her true love, and her true purpose. She was finally happy, completely and utterly happy. Her journey had been long and difficult, but it had led her to a place of peace, contentment, and everlasting love. The town looked to them as an example of what true love and partnership should be. They were living proof that happiness could be found at any age and in any circumstance. Sarah, in particular, became a symbol of hope for women who felt overlooked or undervalued, showing them that their worth was not defined by their age or appearance. Years passed, seasons changed, and the small town of Montana continued to thrive, thanks in part to the unwavering dedication of Sarah and Jedediah. The blacksmith shop, now bearing both their names, remained a central hub of activity, its rhythmic clang a constant reminder of their presence and their enduring partnership. Sarah's hair turned silver, mirroring Jedediah's, and lines etched themselves upon their faces, telling the story of a life well lived, a life filled with love, laughter, and shared experiences. But their eyes still sparkled with the same youthful enthusiasm. Their hearts still beat with the same passionate love. They watched as the town grew, as new families arrived and old ones prospered. They welcomed each new member with open arms, offering guidance, support, and a warm sense of belonging. They witnessed births, deaths, weddings, and celebrations, sharing in the joys and sorrows of their community. They were the heart and soul of the town, the couple who held everyone together. Even in their later years, they continued to work at the blacksmith shop, albeit at a slower pace. They trained apprentices, passing on their skills and their knowledge to the next generation. Sarah continued to teach her classes, inspiring young women to pursue their dreams and to believe in their own potential. She became a living legend, a symbol of hope and resilience for all who knew her. Jedediah, in turn, continued to create beautiful and functional pieces, his craftsmanship as sharp and precise as ever. He found joy in seeing his creations used and appreciated, knowing that he was leaving a lasting legacy behind. One day, as they sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Sarah turned to Jedediah, her eyes filled with love. "We've had a good life, haven't we?" she said softly. Jedediah smiled, taking her hand in his. "The best," he replied. "All thanks to you." They sat in silence for a long time, content to simply be together, sharing the quiet beauty of the moment. They knew that their time together was limited, but they were grateful for every day, every moment, every memory they had shared. Their love story became a legend, a tale told and retold for generations to come. It was a story about a woman who had been rejected for being too old, but who had found true love and acceptance in the most unexpected place. It was a story about a man who had seen past her age and recognized her inner beauty, a man who had given her a chance to start anew. It was a story about the power of love, the importance of compassion, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And it all began with a kind blacksmith and a rejected mail-order bride. Their love was a beacon, showing everyone that true love knows no bounds and that happily ever after is possible, no matter the circumstances. The town continued to cherish their memory, ensuring that their story would live on forever.